Senator Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just picking up on your word here, it's one thing, Director Tenet, to perhaps dismantle them, and I think you have, or we have, and they have, all of you, in some ways, but at the same time, by dismantling them, you've dispersed them.
That's an opportunity, sir.
Okay. Opportunity?
That's an opportunity.
Okay.
When you get people moving, that's opportunistic.
Because they're on the run, aren't they?
Yes, sir. That creates plenty of chaos in the system.
Sure. I want to get into something else. I want to pick up a little bit on what Senator Levin was talking about earlier. And this afternoon, late here, I'm not here to get into a semantic debate on the meaning of the word or term accountability. Obviously, the word accountability means different things to different people. To some people, it has no meaning, literally no meaning. To others, where you have real feelings of responsibility, it equals accountability means perhaps responsibility, in that context. And it's troubling to me, and it was to Senator Levin and to others on this committee, that it seems from your testimony and other evidence that the staff has collected that no one is responsible, in the CIA.
No one's responsible for what?
For the failures. In other words, no one is accountable. No one is responsible. No one's responsible at the Bureau, at the FBI. No one's responsible. In other words, it's no one's responsibility. That's troubling, very troubling. To each of you, what does the term accountability mean to you? I'll start with General Hayden. In this context, if you have a job to do, and if you do it, or if you do it in a slipshod way, and there's no measure of performance, or if it is, nothing happens. Go ahead, General. What does accountability mean to you, sir?
There's a difference between a job not being done
Absolutely.
and a job being done in a slipshod way.
That's right.
And I think what Director Tenet was pointing out, that the issues that this committee and our dialogue has uncovered are systemic issues, that we put people in situations in which they had inadequate tools or inadequate circumstances to succeed.
But not always. Now, we've had, General, we'll all concede that you need more resources, and we've worked with you, Senator Graham and other members of the committee, to revamp as a priority NSA, and you're working toward that goal. We have to. It's national.
Sir.
We've worked with Director Tenet.
Yes, you have.
I'm not on the Judiciary Committee or the Criminal Justice Appropriations, but I know others have worked in that regard. I know you don't have too many resources, but a lot of this is decisions that people make or fail to make. Director Tenet.
Well, sir, let me just say.
What does responsibility, accountability mean to you?
Well, sir, when you look at this, I look at it in the following ways. I look at anybody's performance.
Sure.
I say, tell me about the integrity of the individual, how hard they were working. Tell me about their understanding of their job. Tell me about whether they were slipshod. Tell me about whether they were paying attention to detail and doing everything they knew how to do. Now, when somebody
Stop you a minute. Let me just say, in knowing everything they knew how to do. But what if you had people in these jobs that didn't know what they were doing and didn't know the standard? And I know some people at the Bureau, we had testimony here, didn't know the FISA standard. Even lawyers over there, Director Mueller. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying that they're inadequately trained. Go ahead, Director Tenet. I'll try not to stop you again.
No, it's okay, sir. Keep going. I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
Maybe you'll pick it up again.
I was on a roll.
What is? No, you thought you were. You weren't on a roll.
No, I was on a roll, sir.
I don't think so. Director Mueller, what is your feeling? How do you feel about the word accountability, the term accountability? Is that responsibility? And in the context, what does it mean?
It's giving people both the responsibility and the authority to do a job, to set out parameters, what you expect from people, and if they do not live up to those parameters, then you hold them quote, accountable. You
Hold
move
them
them, or you, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But it is, the ultimate accountability is me. And
True.
I have to set those standards. I have to give them the tools to do the job. It does not make any sense for me to hold somebody accountable if I have not been given them the responsibility, the authority, and the tools to do the job. That is just, that's wrong. And so in terms of something like the training on the FISA issue, it's a responsibility of me to assure when I see something like that we put into place the mechanisms to get those individuals trained. If we did not give them the training, I cannot hold accountable that person who was inadequately trained because I did not provide the person with that training.
I want to pick up lastly on Senator Levin's statement, paraphrasing. Has anyone in the CIA or the FBI been held accountable for the failures thus far of September the 11th or the events leading up to it? Director Tenet.
No, and there's a reason.
Because they didn't prevent.
What's
We're in the
reason?
middle of a war.
Oh, wait a minute.
We're in the
Wait,
middle of a war,
oh,
sir.
That's
And
not
I'll
much
tell
of an
you-
excuse,
No,
Director
sir.
Tenet. Let me tell you
No,
something.
that's,
No,
well,
wait a minute.
it's my judgment to make.
Well, I know it's your opinion. Let me tell you what happened. Do you know in the Second World War, when we were in the war, that there were just dozens and dozens of generals that were, and captains of ships, especially the submarines, that were brought, were replaced immediately. You ever heard of Kasserine Pass, Anzio Beach, those things? They jerked generals out of the war and put people in. Patton went into Kasserine Pass after Rommel defeated the American forces there. Anzio Beach, I forget the general's name, but he was supposed to have been, you know, the up-and-coming general. He was brought back stateside. I think there has to be accountability. That's what Senator Levin was talking about. I think you ought to go back and look at the real meaning of the word. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shelby. Congresswoman Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, gentlemen. I want to also commend the members of our committee for their very wise judgments that they are bringing to this joint inquiry. And wisdom is what we need now, because certainly we have to have accountability internally within the agencies and externally up the chart to the President of the United States. We also don't want to find a scapegoat and say we've solved it, but for that we would have not had September 11. We really have to protect the American people in the future, so we have to be, I think, judicious in how we evaluate any one piece of information and how it all relates to each other and what the accountability is. I have serious concerns that our civil liberties may be, part of our civil liberties may be part of the price we pay for our falling short in areas where we should have done better. So I think we have to, after we go through all of this, step back and try to make some evaluations without declaring something the cause, which would be a false sense of security to the American people. I have a couple observations. First of all, I don't want the day to go by, Mr. Director, but without saying to you, Mr. Tenet, that I've looked at the legal class. What we want is to find the truth, and that's why many of us have advocated things that we've talked about earlier in terms of the commission, etc. And we want more openness wherever possible, and certainly we don't want to jeopardize sources and methods or legal cases or whatever, but we want the truth and we want openness. And I looked at the legal justification for keeping classified the government positions to which certain intelligence information was provided, and I think the legal arguments that were made were not compelling in my view, and I think it's a misapplication of the classification standard. Moving on from that, getting back to my main point about opportunities that were there which may or may not be dispositive of this issue as to whether we should have known, could have prevented, and are helpful in the future. But there are certain windows, the Moussaoui window, windows of people coming into San Diego. I happen to think, we're trained in this committee, as all of us are, I think, that force protection is our first priority, to protect our young men and women in uniform wherever they are, not only when they are in battle, but also wherever they are. And I would hope that in the future we would see the vulnerability we have when somebody comes into San Diego, for example, which is rich with service people and installations, that we would be even more careful because of the exposure we would have to our forces there, recognizing, of course, we want to protect all of the American people. It's interesting to me, Mr. Director Tenet, that did I conclude correctly that the arrest and apprehension of Moussaoui may have hastened these folks to move on more quickly?
It's just a judgment, Mrs. Pelosi.
And
I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, it's a personal judgment.
I appreciate your reinforcing that judgment. In your testimony, it contains many instances, Mr. Tenet, where in which strategic warning was provided about the possibility of terrorist events or attacks. Your testimony contains, though, few, if any, instances in which tactical warnings were provided about a specific attack to occur, specific place, specific time. Tactical warning, of course, is by definition actionable. Strategic warning suggests general action, if any. Strategic warning tells us something bad may happen somewhere at some time. What action should flow from this type of warning? What is the value of that type of warning that we can, how can we act upon that?
Well, Ms. Pelosi, what we tried to do when you read through the testimony and look at the disruptions and all the things, we tried to change the balance. And when we couldn't get a tactical warning, we tried to get things moving so we could generate more information to stop things. There's a stream of things that were stopped here. Numerous places and attacks and individuals that we apprehended who were going to. So what you're trying to do through this kind of planning is make your luck, be disruptive enough to collect additional information, have operations, drive analysis to give you the ability to figure out if you could ever get that tactical warning. And that's the hard part of this business. Now, I'd say, you know, if you look at where we were last year compared to this year, we're much better in that regard overseas. The disruptions and information we've collected have not only given us tactical warning of events that were going to occur overseas, they've given us real and valuable strategic insights into targeting and planning that we can then provide perhaps through Homeland Security or other means. So it's a dilemma. It's always that when is the date, time, and place of an event?
Or even something narrower than, we always say in California that people have predicted 10 of the last 2 earthquakes. You know, they're always saying there's going to be an earthquake, and then a couple of times it happens. But that's pretty good, 2 and 10. That's pretty good, at least, and we have some idea where these things may happen because of the fault lines. We have to have a better idea of the fault lines in the U.S. so that we can have a higher, our strategic warnings can be narrowed down to more tactical warnings. It appears that my time is up, but if anybody would like to make any observation on that, I'm sure the chairman and his generous gavel would allow.
Ma'am, I understand exactly what you need, and frankly, we did very well in the summer of 2001 with strategic warning. It was tactical warning that was missing. But the analog to the fault lines, it's one step short of a perfect analogy. And it's simply this: our fault lines change their minds. Okay? Our fault lines decide not to crack because of our issuing warnings about the fault lines. So it's a more difficult thing for us to measure.
I appreciate that, General, but we do have areas of exposure. You know, as a mom, as a person who protects her children, her grandchildren, my husband and I, you know where your exposure is. So you have to make sure that those windows are closed and locked, and whatever else that you do to protect your family is taken care of. And I think that we had exposure internationally even. We had exposure with the coal, we had exposure at the East African embassies, we had exposure at Khobar Towers, and internally we had exposure at our airports, which brought such tragedy and sadness to the American people and to the families. Thank you, General. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congresswoman Pelosi. Congresswoman Harman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention that from here I can barely see, but I can see the pictures of some who perished in the on September 11, and I appreciate the fact that you bring those pictures into these hearings because it keeps us focused on something that's very central to what we're looking at. I want to change the subject to something mentioned in General Hayden's testimony, I think only in General Hayden's testimony, and that is technology. He was clear about the fact that about a third of his technology is in-house, and that will go down to about 18% shortly, and he was describing some of the new contracts he's let with the private sector. I represent the district that probably makes more of our intelligence architecture than any other district in the country. And if it doesn't now, it certainly will under my leadership. But nonetheless, I think it does now. And I think that that's wonderful, and I commend the people who make it. I think that the cutting-edge technologies reside outside of the capacity of your departments. You obviously know that at NSA. The CIA knows that. That's why you set up InQtel, which is a venture capital firm that procures emerging technologies for you. And I think that has been a very successful venture, and commend you for doing that. Again, a lot of Californians are on that board. It's a good board. To you, Director Mueller, I think when one thinks about technology, you are the one who has to play the most catch-up. I think most people think that's not a food, the way I pronounce it. Most people think that the FBI was in the dark ages, or maybe pre-dark ages, before 9/11. And the notion that you didn't have email systems, or I don't think you did, or you didn't have interoperable anything, is pretty horrifying. And I know, Director Mueller, that you're moving fast to correct all that. But my question in my 2 remaining minutes to all of you is, how do you assess the importance of technology, and not just for your individual agencies, but the importance of figuring out the digital systems that we will need to connect us together, connect the humans together, connect the information dots together, and do the kinds of data mining and other things that will augment what the overworked human forces that you have there can possibly produce, even under the best guidance.
Ma'am, it's the war winner for us, and I don't mean just because it happens to solve this particular problem, which it does. It is an expression of the strength of the American people. As an airman, I'm fond of saying the American Air Force is the military expression of the American aviation industry. With regard to NSA, we are the security expression of the American computer and telecommunications industry. We as a nation need to play to our strengths. That's our strength.
I can't add anything better than that.
And we have to, adopting technology in the FBI, going from a paper-driven organization to a digital organization will free us up, make us more horizontal, remove a lot of the bureaucracy that we've heard about in the course of these hearings, give us new opportunities, investigative tools. But I will add one caution, that with that new technology has to come training, has to come user-friendliness, it has to be changes in job descriptions, it has to be changes in procedures. It is one thing to bring in boxes. You can bring in the computer, you can bring in the software, you can bring in the hardware. But if you do not provide the changed business practices, if you do not provide the training, if you do not provide the user-friendly interfaces, then you will be going no place. And so while people talk of technology, you can't talk of technology divorced from what you're doing throughout the organization. And to the extent that we can adopt the technology and change the organization, it will give us the freedom to be far more agile, flexible than we've been in the past.
Well, I agree with that. My light is on, but I would just add that we are confronting a digital foe. Those who threaten us know how to use technology. They don't necessarily own it, but they embed messages in other communications architectures, and we're discovering that finally, and it's a good thing that we are. But we need to be one step ahead of those folks, and one of the additional features of the Homeland Security Department legislation we keep talking about is a front door for emerging private sector technologies that should help us get one step ahead of the terrorists.
Can I make one response to that? if I could, Mr. Chairman. That is that while I say we are behind in providing our agents the technology they need to centralize, analyze, and disseminate the information, we are on the cutting edge, I believe, when it comes to investigating any aspect of computer crimes, whether it be denial of service attacks or worms or viruses or hacking attacks and the like. And we have to build on that expertise that we have in-house as we develop the technology throughout the organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congresswoman Harman. As Senator Shelby has already done, I'm going to have to leave at this time. I wish to again express my appreciation for the service that each of you gentlemen is rendering to our country and for your service to our joint inquiry today. I am going to turn the gavel over as directed by Co-Chairman Goss to Congressman Beerider, who also will be the next questioner. After we complete this last of our public hearings, our task will turn to preparing a final report with recommendations. We had 3 assignments. One was to attempt to determine what happened on September the 11th, second, why it happened, and third, and I believe most important, what should we do about it? To that end, the committees will meet again, possibly during the adjournment of the Congress, in accordance with the rules that govern the convening of the meeting of the 2 committees, to commence the process of completing our task by completing our report and final recommendations. As this might be the last public opportunity to do so, again, I want to express my deepest appreciation to Ms. Eleanor Hill and to her outstanding colleagues who have placed us, I think, in such an advanced position to have told the American people with a clarity and cohesion that I do not believe they had previously had what did happen and why, and now accept the challenge of answering the question, what are we going to do about it? With those challenges still ahead of us, I say thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Graham. We just have a few members yet, it appears, to complete the questioning of the second round and the hearing. And I'll begin my comments by saying that I think we should try to learn what we can from foreign counterparts to the extent that it might be relevant and consistent with our own values and governmental system. Accordingly, I have a couple questions in that vein. And Director Mueller, I would like to direct the first one to you. Scotland Yard has a system of special branches that pass sanitized intelligence information to the police and to the private sector. The British Security Service sends staff to the special branch offices. This gives them a national reach. Do you believe this approach could work in the United States? Why and why not? Or why not?
Well, I think aspects of it certainly could work. I think our joint terrorism task forces that we've set up around the country are a variation of that type of system. We are far larger than Great Britain. We have something like 18,000 police departments, 17,000, 18,000 police departments throughout the United States. And we're unlike Australia, Canada, which has the RCMP, or Great Britain. And that distinction makes a big difference. We are a democracy, and we are democratized our policing within the United States. And the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, in my mind, are mechanisms whereby we can accomplish the same type of sharing that is done by Scotland Yard. One of the things we are doing is that we are integrating in the task forces individuals from the CIA in the country, so that we have ready on scene that type of information that is inside the CIA computers that can match up with the information we may have in the state and local level, which in my mind goes some distance towards accomplishing what the MI5 model does in Great Britain.
Thank you, Mr.
I think we've got to do a better job of that, but we are making strides there.
Thank you, Director Mueller. You're certainly right to point out the differences in our system, and especially the size of our country and the number of police departments. But I've noticed that the information technology, which you were just getting into in the end of your comments, that is being employed now, being put in place in the United Kingdom, seems to fulfill some of those needs, even for a vast country like our own with different political subdivisions and responsibilities. And I noticed that it's being done largely with American consulting and IT firms.
Can I add one thing there?
Yes,
it has
please
always
do.
been my cherished hope that we could, throughout the United States, standardize computer input for police departments. We tried to do it on the East Bay. It's being done in St. Louis and the like because from county to county, police department to police department, we have no standard for the input of things like names, dates, and the like, standardized fields, standardized records. Were we to have that in the United States, we would have the foundation upon which to exchange the information that we want to exchange among the various law enforcement entities. But we are far ways from doing that.
Thank you. General Hayden, the Attorney General, as you may be aware, recently approved new guidelines to govern the conduct of counterterrorism investigations under the new USA Patriot Act and the FISA statute. I understand the Department of Justice has established a training program for that, and the CIA is a participant in it, a full participant, as I understand, so that this kind of information sharing about the proper use of these tools will be available. Are you aware of the training, and furthermore, most importantly, is NSA going to participate in it?
Absolutely, sir. And let me tell you, for our narrow purposes, what the Patriot Act has allowed us to do is to more readily, more quickly, more completely be able to share in information of foreign intelligence value derived from FBI FISAs. That has been a major step forward for us.
Thank you. Director Tenet or Director Mueller, or both of you, the MI5, again back to the United Kingdom, and its sister foreign service, the Secret Intelligence Service, work on international terrorism jointly. They determine which service is best placed to handle a target and pursue targets collaboratively. Because international terrorism respects no borders, the service responsibilities in this area are blurred. This eliminates the need for handoff from one service to another, which has been at times a problem in our own country. What are your views on how this could be implemented in the United States?
We do it today, sir. In terms of working overseas with his legats and working with our chiefs of station, we started this 4 or 5 years ago. We do this today. I mean,
You
we
feel
have
that-
handoff.
You feel that there's any difference in their ability to avoid a handoff problem because of their arrangement that you cannot or are not now matching?
No, sir, I don't know the precision of what their arrangement, I'll go take a look at it, but I know that our arrangement, in terms of how we exchange information and make determinations of where primacy lies and how we hand off to each other, has been working quite well for a number of years overseas. We're very pleased with where we are.
Director Mueller, do you have any comment with respect to that?
I would agree with that. I think it always we need to do it better. We ought to have enhanced exchanges. I think with the FBI's transformation of its technology capabilities, that it will much enhance our ability to be integrate our analysts, integrate our systems. But I think we've come tremendous ways, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, and I guess especially since 9/11. We're doing things we didn't do prior to 9/11, and I think the handoff is very good now, certainly far better than it was prior to 9/11.
And the handoff problems that we focused on are primarily on Homeland Security issues during the course of this investigation. My time has expired, so I'm pleased to yield now to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Romer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we very much appreciate your time. You've been here for 6.5 hours, and skip your lunch, where we hope you don't skip your dinner as well. I want to be brief in asking a couple questions about progress in the war on terrorism, and maybe you can be brief back with me too. My constituents often ask me, how do we gauge the success in this war? It's tough to quantify and it's tough to explain. Director Mueller, how would you explain it to them in regards of what progress have we made on the anthrax investigation? Can you update us on that?
Well, there are several aspects to the investigation. One is looking at particular individuals. We still have individuals that we are looking at there. Another aspect of the investigation is identifying the chemical composition of the anthrax that was found in the Daschle and the Leahy letters, and comparing that anthrax to the anthrax that was found in the letters that were mailed to the Post in New York and to Brokaw. And the chemical and the DNA analysis of those samples is ongoing. We are utilizing that process to compare those samples to others that are known to us from a variety of laboratories.
Have we narrowed the field down to...
We are narrowing the field down, yes, but I will in the same breath say that until we have somebody identified against whom we have brought charges, I would not exclude any possibility. We always keep our minds open for any other possibility, although the investigation may be leading us down one trail and we may look like we're going in a particular way. We always have to be open to the possibilities of another source of responsibility.
And is there a time frame on this as to when you hope to conclude it?
The chemical analyses will probably be going on for several more months. I would have liked to have concluded it yesterday. I would have liked to have concluded it a year ago. And I am comfortable and confident that we are doing everything possible to identify the person responsible for those anthrax attacks. It is, and I will tell you, with the sniper attacks now, it is yet another drain on manpower for this region, but nonetheless, we understand the necessity, the desirability, the importance of doing everything we can to bring the person responsible for those anthrax deaths to justice as soon as possible.
Do you still believe, to the best of your knowledge, that this is a domestic type of attack with the anthrax, or is that still open?
Well, the reporters often report what they think we believe.
You tell me. I'll get it straight from you.
I've tried not to state what we believe. They have speculated, that, and I know at one point we had a profile of an individual that we did publish, and we have not changed that profile. But I, in the same breath, will tell you that just because the FBI, and they're very good at it, puts out a profile is not proof.
Okay.
A profile is not facts indicating a particular person was responsible for that act.
So you didn't answer my question, and that's okay, but you still don't suspect, you're not excluding anything in this.
Not excluding.
Profile is domestic, but you're not excluding a foreign source or a terrorist source. How about in terms of the sniper case? Do you have any suspicions on that? Your gut, your personal opinion on this as to what you think?
Well, I would not to express any...
George gives that every now and then. He gives his personal opinion.
But I will tell you at the outset, I believe the investigation is going exceptionally well. There is a combination of the work of state and local coming together in ways that are the way we have to do business in the future. And Charles Moose, the police chief in Montgomery County, is doing a superb job, and we have a special agent in charge there is working with him, as does ATF. Getting to your question as to where actually, my opinion, I don't think it appropriate that I give you an opinion. What I do think it appropriate is when we have evidence, we present it to the prosecutor so that an arrest can be made.
But all resources are being devoted, and you're confident
Yes.
that everything that the FBI has is being devoted to the case to help the local and state officials pursue the sniper.
And not only what the FBI has, as the newspapers reported, to the extent that we believe there are capabilities with the Department of Defense, we've reached out and sought those capabilities. We have almost 450 agents who are now participating in that investigation. I believe ATF has close to 200, and I don't have a figure myself for the number of state and local law enforcement authorities who are also participating. I will tell you, we've had thousands of leads, whether it be on our tip line or others, that we are investigating, and there are hopeful leads amongst those that we have received over the last week.
I thank the director. I know my time is up. I was hopeful to ask some questions to Mr. Tenet about progress on Osama bin Laden, but maybe Mr. Reyes will do that.
Time of the gentleman's expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Reyes, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only have one question, and I'll be glad to yield my time to my colleague. But the only question I had was for Mr. Tenet, and it was relevant to the testimony on page 9 that you gave where you developed in '99 a plan to target Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda globally. And I'm going to assume that the plan includes specific resources, personnel, equipment, training, associated cost. And my question is, could you furnish us a copy of that plan? I'm very much interested in
Sure.
in helping the agency on several levels, including on the budget level. So
Of course.
could you furnish
course.
that to us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to yield my time to.
Next time the director's up to our committee, I'll ask him about Osama bin Laden.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Wyden.
Thank you,
is
Mr. Chairman.
recognized.
Director Tenet, as you know, your October 7th letter to Chairman Graham generated a fair amount of discussion.
Oh, I
And
know.
I was interested in asking about a part of it that really hadn't. The last graph in the letter says, and I quote, Iraq's increasing support to extremist Palestinians, coupled with growing indications of a relationship with al-Qaeda, suggests that Baghdad's link to terrorists will increase, even absent U.S. military action. Now, I wanted to ask you about this
I don't have it.
because al-Qaeda's desire to overthrow secular Arab states and replace them with Islamic governments would threaten Saddam's regime itself. And so my question would be, in your view and based on the information that you have, what does Saddam gain in the long term by helping al-Qaeda? Because the question, for me at least, and I'd like you to kind of walk us through it, is that a stronger al-Qaeda puts them in a better position to overthrow his own regime, and al-Qaeda's got a desire to overthrow secular Arab states and threaten them with Islamic governments. And just, if you would, take me through the analysis there.
I actually have a different view. I actually think these
I wanna hear it.
distinctions between Sunnis and Shias and secularists and fundamentalists in the current environment we find ourselves in are bad distinctions to make in terms of looking at behavior for the future. What is al-Qaeda in Iraq? What would they have in common? Us, the Saudis, others. And the point I would make to you is if you look at al-Qaeda, and you can focus on Iraq or Iran or whoever you want to focus on, but in a clandestine relationship where things are obscured and your hand is hidden, there are enormous advantages. And so I think that distinction that you're making is, now people make that distinction, sir. There are some people who believe it's important.
I just wanted to get your sense of it.
I don't personally buy into it. I actually think we should think about al-Qaeda as a front company that will take capability wherever it can get it to further its own operational goals. And where there's a confluence of a target that's common and interesting, everybody benefits. So the letter, in terms of the things we've seen that we've declassified, senior level contacts, trainings in poisons and gases, among WMD relationships, etc. You've seen the letter. You know, when you peel this story back, I don't know where it's going to take you. And as is often the case in these terrorism looks, when you peel the onion back, you find more and more all the time. The only thing I would say is keep your mind open and don't get, we shouldn't just think about this in conventional terms because they don't think about it that way.
Well, I don't have any quarrel with your analysis, and I think that the distinction really is, and you seem to suggest these people are just thinking short-term, and looking for every possible opportunity, and their short-term interest is to be against the United States. But somehow we've got to reconcile that with some of the long-term considerations as well, and that's what I was asking about. The last point I would make, just as we wrap up these hearings, and I guess I'm in a position to be the last to wrap up the public hearings, is that when I look down the road to where we ought to be, it seems to me we have to create a new balance. I mean, there is a clear need to protect the people of this country, and that requires that sensitive information not be out across the streets of this country. At the same time, there is a public right to know, and in effect there is a public need to know, which is what I was trying to address with respect to what I think is the clear overclassification concern that I brought up. What we're going to try to do up here is to give you all the tools to do it. That's what initiatives like the terrorist identification system that I've developed is a part of. And we need you all to meet us halfway. And that means getting at the abuses, for example, in the classification area. I tried to skim over your testimony again. I didn't see the word classification come up. Now, I will accept you at your word because you have been blunt and straight with me in the past that when you say you're going to follow up on it, you do. But this has got to change. I mean, there have been abuses. Pat Moynihan's been talking about that for years. And I think that what we're talking about is a new balance between ensuring that sensitive information that can't get out, that would threaten this country's well-being, is protected, but that we also take steps to ensure that the public's right and need to know is addressed. And suffice it to say, there is a lot of work to do to secure that new balance.
I'll work with you, Senator.
I thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Wyden.